My name is Max. I'm working as a partnerships manager here at Finoa. Later during the presentation, I will tell you a bit more about Finoa and what we do. But first of all, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here with you. It's always great to hear, especially to be on the forefront of crypto and getting into discussions with early stage startups like yourself. So also thank you thank you to Yannis for inviting me today. Today, I would like to talk about the road to commercialization for crypto startups. And for that, let's start right from the beginning. What is the goal of a crypto startup, right? The goal, of course, is to provide useful products and services for the users to improve their lives. And ideally also to become financially successful by doing that. So the question arises, a very straightforward one. What does a crypto startup need to think about, especially in the beginning, in order to become successful? And one important aspect, especially in the early stage, the question, of course, about funding. Should we raise you could say a private round? Should we conduct a public sales or do a combination of these are usual questions that always arise in the beginning and are very important. Besides that, obviously, the strategy aspect in regards to the own tokenomics, if there is a native token, especially also the fact that crypto space and you always hear the term, not your keys, not your coins, and decentralization, but it's still a valid business, right? And the question can be asked, like, how centralized or decentralized should the startup and the structure be especially in the beginning? Also, questions around strategy, like the expansion plans for the product, community, and team, has to be considered rather sooner than later. On top of that, of course, being a crypto startup, what about the tech, right? Do we organize hackathons? How do we set up ecosystem funds? Also, should grants be offered to attract new developers and also support the existing community? And as you can see, there are many aspects that have to be considered in the early stage. And to hit you with the truth, of course, there's no one universal formula that can be applied in order to become successful, you could say, right? In the sense of many roads lead to Rome, you could say that also many roads lead to success, and every startup with their own individual stage has to find out and figure out what is the right path to commercialization. And luckily, you already do the right steps, in my opinion, because being part of the accelerator program is a way of getting the right support from experienced entities in the space to can guide you and also adjust the own individual path to success. However, besides these just mentioned open questions, there are certain universal tasks that have to be taken care of by all early stage startups. And if I can name some of them, that would be something like the regulation and compliance. Being a bit more specific here, questions have to be answered, like what is the optimal way to structure my company, but also something like what tax does my company have to pay and how much, right? Especially taking into consideration that taxation on cryptocurrencies is different in every jurisdiction, and also with the cryptocurrency space, there are different taxes that has to be paid when it comes to just hodl strategy, or maybe some staking rewards, etc., lending and DeFi. So there are certain compliance and regulation questions that has to be dealt with. Besides that, also managing operations, like, for example, maintaining and expanding the community, which is a crucial part, especially in the beginning, on an ongoing basis, right, have to be dealt with. And also to maintain and also improve the relationships with with investors. And last but not least, there's this aspect of managing funds, right? So how do I, as a early stage startup, how do I make sure that the company, the company's treasury, you could say, the funds, are being stored in a secure and compliant way? Besides that, we also have to ask ourselves what banking services my startup need. For example, the startup could have employees that are paid in fiat. So certain banking services are needed to set up in order to facilitate these, and also some on and off ramps from crypto, potentially from crypto to fiat and vice versa, in order to be able to pay, for example, the salaries. Another aspect that could be or has to be considered rather sooner than later is as well the potential to generate additional income by increasing the company's capital efficiency with potentials like, of course, staking possibilities. It could be the staking possibilities like the smart contract functions within the own native token, but it also could be, let's say, staking possibilities of the base layer coin. Let's say a startup builds on top of Ethereum, that there could be some additional rewards to be generated by holding the base layer token. But if it's not the case, or on top of that, there are also, and you all are aware of these, of course, possibilities to interact with the DeFi ecosystem. Maybe, for example, lending by lending out maybe stable coins that were received from institutional investors based on a SAFT agreement. So all these tasks have to be dealt with, right? And they're, you could say, universal tasks. And what we at Finoa experienced working with various crypto startups over the last 4 years is that many successful startups that were in the early stage, they included the right service providers or partners that help them on the way to commercialization to deal with these, you could say, universal tasks, right? And especially if you think about topics like regulation, compliance, finance, these are not always topics that are super attractive, and often they are therefore neglected, and especially in the beginning. So I think these service providers, or my intention is also to put a little bit more focus, or to give attention to the possibility of including them early on, to then have more time and efforts and resources to spend on the core business of the startup. As mentioned earlier, already participating in an accelerator program like at CV Labs is in a sense a collaboration with experts, with a service provider, with a good partner that can provide the right support on the way to commercialization. And on top of that, however, there are, when it comes to, let's take the old examples again, when it comes to regulation and compliance tasks, here we can think of as legal and tax advisory firms that are specializing in cryptocurrency businesses, and therefore can help in a very efficient way to answer the questions, like we said before: how do I structure the company? What is the optimal taxation? What do I have to deal with in that regard? When it comes to, again, managing operations, I think there are many complementary tools out there that can help to, as mentioned, communicating and improving the relationships with the community, with the users, with the developers, but also increasing the quality of the product, and also maintaining a good relationship with existing investors, but also with investors, with upcoming investors. And this can be tools like classical social media tools, communication tools, Discord, Telegram, the usual ones that are leveraged a lot within the crypto space, but also more sophisticated tools, for example, reporting tools for generating reports for investors or maybe for the users, but also for national authorities. And again, last but not least, managing funds. I think here again important when it comes to safekeeping funds, but also getting the right banking services and also considering additional income sources like staking or lending. There are many crypto service providers or native crypto service providers, like for example, a custodian that could really help and support to manage these tasks. Being in the crypto space, most interactions, at least on the on-chain level or on the blockchain level, require the interaction with the private keys. So I would like to dive a bit deeper into services that manage these private keys. Namely, I refer to, of course, digital asset custodians. And custody or custodian is a term that we all heard eventually, but maybe some of us are not 100% sure what a custodian actually is and what a custodian actually does. So I would like to provide you a little introduction here. First of all, a short definition. A custodian is an entity that holds customers' assets for safekeeping them in order to minimize the risk of misuse, theft, or loss. And typically, or very often, this entity is regulated and has a granted authority like a bank, like a financial institutions. And this, of course, comes with certain requirements from the regulators in regards to these entity, to their financials, to their daily operations, but also, of course, IT security. So it's not just a random, a custodian is usually not just you could say a random startup company, but there's a lot of regulation involved. As you can see here in the graphic, I think it's also important, or provide an overview of current providers of custodians and that there are different flavors of custodians. As mentioned, I think the biggest group are the regulated custodians, which are, of course, regulated by the national authorities. FINOA is one of them. However, we also have unregulated providers that, as the name suggests, are not regulated. Maybe because in the jurisdiction there's no such obligation. And I think also another group worth to mention are the so-called tech providers. A very popular example is Fireblocks here, that are technically not custodians, but they provide the necessary technology to their customers so that they are able to keep their private keys safe by themselves. On top of that, there's also a fourth group. These are the hybrid solutions. These can be entities that provide a mix of tech and custody services by themselves, but it also can be a joint collaboration. I think recently there was an announcement of Fireblocks and I think Zodia that they collaborated in that regard. And a good example of that could be a crypto exchange that would like to safekeep the private keys, the cold wallet, you could say, with a regulated custodian, but still need the tech solution or the technical wallet setup for their users. And this could be a potential use case for, let's say, a collaboration between Fireblocks and FINOA or some hybrid entities that provide these services. Of course, there's always, and I mentioned it before, there's this option of self-custody funds, right? Especially in crypto. So I think it's a fair question to ask, what are actually the benefits of working with a custodian? And first of all, the security. So safekeeping and securing the assets is the core business and focus of a custodian. And that, I think, already provides a certain level of peace of mind, because let's say a crypto startup that comes up with a specific use case like supply chain, it should not be core business to safekeep their treasuries, for example, or the investors' money. So I think this already provides a certain level of peace of mind. And on top of that, of course, the mentioned regulation is a very important aspect. Often the custodians are regulated, as mentioned, and this provides also some, you could say, regulatory certainty, especially in the crypto space, right? Where often is sometimes it's a little bit uncertain, and the certainty is also a benefit that I would like to mention here. Speaking about regulation, what also could be the case is that if you will have institutional investors, sometimes they require the startups in which they invest to work with a regulated custodian, and there could be several constellations. For example, as mentioned, if there's some sort of soft agreement where stable coins are invested into the startup, maybe the investors require the startup to keep them safe with a regulated entity. It can also be the request to provide custody solutions for the native token in which they invested into, right? And it also can be the request that the team, when there's a team fund, that they keep the own treasury safe with a regulated custodian. It can be the case. So it's not only like pure regulation from the law, but it also can be something more, you could say, subjective from the institutional investors. But again, they also have their LPs and their regulations. So this also can be triggered by law. I think interesting also to mention is that working with a regulated entity, like a financial institution, basically, also can help to increase the reputation of a startup, especially in the early stage where the market may still not be convinced, right? And we see a lot of volatility and a lot of also scams, you could say, in rug pulls in crypto still. So I think working with regulated entities and partners also increases their own reputation, and therefore this can also attract new partners and additional stakeholders. Last but not least, I think a very good or a crypto service provider in general, they are good ones. They always have this added value. So they're not only providing core services or their core features, but also try to come up with additional services, but also with a wide network of additional partners or customers or users where they could help out with, and also maybe the potential to integrating other tools. So it just makes it easier to streamline certain data. I think it's now it's a good time to give you just a brief overview of Finoa. Janus, you mentioned it before. Finoa is a regulated custodian based in Berlin, Germany. We also have an office in Porto since the beginning of the year. So we are expanding as well. And by regulated, again, I want to highlight we are regulated by the German financial supervisory called BaFin. And in Germany, interesting fact, there's a dedicated crypto custody license that has to be acquired if you, for example, hold private keys on behalf of customers, or if you would like to have more regulatory certainty. So there's a dedicated license for that. A quick overview, we are a crypto native company in the market, active in the market since 2018. And currently we are serving about 300 customers. And last year we raised a Series A round of about 22 million, support over 200 assets. I will come back to that a bit later. And currently we are about 120 employees, so we are also steadily growing here. To answer the question, what exactly we do, I mentioned, of course, our core business, custody, again, regulated by the German BaFin. Besides that, on top of that, we also constantly increase our offering in regards to staking, so that the users have the possibility, and this is often also required, the possibility to stake from within the secure or the regulated custody. And we do that for various layer 1 protocols like Ethereum on the testnet, but also Polkadot we support. Near, Mina, Flow, and a couple of other layer 1 protocols. We here collaborate with, I think, with the best on the market, staking providers, speaking about Block Daemon, Figment, Chorus One. And it was also important to us to give the customer the option to choose if they are interested in staking from within the custody. So there are a couple of possibilities. On top of that, we are about to get our brokerage license. So this trading, what I mentioned before, from within the custody, facilitating on and off ramps is also upcoming and one of the third pillar of our services at Finoa. Just a quick overview, we support over 200 assets. As mentioned, a couple of layer 1 protocols like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Mina, Near, Polkadot, Flow. Also layer 2 protocols, so of course stable coins like USDC and USDT that are often part of a soft agreement. So we support that as well. And important to mention is that this list is on an ongoing basis, so we're constantly adding new coins, and that's why I'm happy to be here as well, to just be on the forefront of the crypto market and see where we can add support. When I say customers, I refer to institutional customers that we serve, and this is a wide range. So starting from more the traditional angle, like family offices that we serve, but also hedge funds. We also have crypto native companies that work with us, such as the exchange CoinList. But also, and this is very interesting here, we work very closely with the protocols and crypto startups like yourself. To mention a couple of them, it's maybe Audius, but also the Near Foundation or the Mina Foundation. And besides the more sophisticated institutional investors, I think it's and I guess this is a particular reason why I'm happy to be here today with you, is that I think one thing that Noah managed pretty well in the past is to be on the forefront and interacting with the early stage startups to try to support them, and not only when they become successful and big. So I think this we manage pretty well. And in that regard, I would like to, besides the theory, right, I would also like to present you a real world example of a crypto startup that has been working with Finoa in that regard. And here I'm referring to O1 Labs that incubated the Mina protocol. And I would like to elaborate a little bit what services they use from Finoa, how the collaboration looked like, and how this partnership evolved. First of all, a very brief overview. What is Mina? Mina is a layer 1 protocol, and they advertise themselves as the lightest blockchain using ZK technology. And their mainnet launch was in March of last year, in 2021. And how did the partnership, how did the collaboration between you could say, an early stage crypto startup, even a base layer protocol, and a crypto service provider like Finoa, how did it evolve, and how does it look like? I think worth again to mention is that we got in touch with the team from Mina before their mainnet launch, so before March 2021. So we supported the mainnet launch, you could say, with all possible features. And I'm referring here, of course, to the custody and staking possibilities, not only for the team, but also again for this request that came from their institutional investors, because Mina actually started with a private sales in the very beginning with institutional investors. On top of that, after the private round, the public sales followed, and they decided to conduct it on CoinList. And we from Finoa, we already had a working relationship and a collaboration with CoinList. So if you think about it, the facilitator of the public sales also have to support your new coin, right? And as we already collaborated with CoinList, it made it way easier to get it up to speed and accelerate the the public sales launch. So we supported them with the public sales. And on top of that, interesting side note as well is that Mina also or the foundation is also using investor reporting tools such as Luca.tech. And this was integrated into Finoa's custody so that the process of streamlining the data for the reportings is just more efficient with this integration. So besides the core business, we also have additional features like the staking possibilities, then supporting with you could say additional network like the public sales support, and also try to integrating more and more tools that are requested by the wider ecosystem of the coin, potentially from the own team, but also potentially from investors like, for example, Luca.tech that is providing reporting tools. As I mentioned a couple of times of now, it is beneficial to approach the right service providers early on. And with this slide, I would like to even further draw a bit more attention to why this is needed. Because when it comes to, let's say, custody or even market listings or other crypto native services, there are a couple of bottlenecks that have to be considered. And mainly there are two aspects that have to be kept in mind. First of all, of course, the regulatory aspect, right? If you have the need to, for example, work with a custodian, there's still being a regulated entity. There's a necessity of doing due diligence, and sometimes it can take a lot of time. So this has to be considered. This has to be considered from the beginning. And if you think about even more exotic use cases like staking or smart contract functionalities like voting, this increases even the effort. That's why I think it's important to start the conversations rather sooner than later in general with any crypto service provider. But it pays off definitely. The second aspect that has to be considered is the technical challenge to integrate a new coin. Unlike maybe let's say like this, if the regulation is clear and it's fine, there still has to be the technical integration has to be done, and this can take a lot of time, especially as the integration is especially as it is in the scope of safekeeping the funds, right, in a regulated manner. So there's no room for mistakes. So this can also take a lot of effort and time, and has to be considered when the option exists to work with a custody solution, or maybe even with a public sales market listing that has to do also their due diligence and also their integrations, which costs time. So I think I wanted to highlight that one more time, because some people may not be aware that these integrations, these collaborations, in the end, they take a lot of time. So it's good to consider them early on. To give a short summary, what we heard today. On the way to commercialization, as we saw, there are certain tasks that for which the individual path have to be found, but there are also certain universal tasks like dealing with compliance, regulation, managing the funds, the daily operations, that they just have to be kept with. And a very valid option is to involve dedicated crypto service providers that are focusing on each areas. And in that scope, we saw that the custodian, a digital asset custodian, is a very good example of a crypto service provider, as it interacts directly with the private keys that are at the core of each blockchain, right? And we saw what a good service provider, a good crypto service provider, brings to the table, and what are the benefits to working with such an entity. Here, I gave you a little introduction of Finoa, right? Digital asset custodian, regulated in Germany, providing also staking possibilities and brokerage soon around the corner. And here I provided you a use case example that can be can serve as an inspiration, working together with the Mina team. but also if you as a startup consider to collaborating with crypto service providers. Is it about custody when it comes to staking or market listings? Just wanted to also draw attention to the bottlenecks that just exist in the markets, not only with, let's say, Finoa, but with any other provider as well. So please keep that in mind. I hope I could provide you some value. I would love to stay in touch. Please add me on LinkedIn, find me on LinkedIn or through Yanis. If you have any questions, of course, also feel free to ask now, or also, again, get in touch with me later. And yeah, thank you very much.